Dr. Sam Amadi, who is joining us via Skype, is now an associate professor of law at Bayes University, and also former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. Dr. Sam Amadi, delighted to have you with us this morning. And we also have with us in the Abuja studios here, Comrade Prince Will Okorie, is National Coordinator of the National Electricity Consumers Protection Advocacy Program. Comrade Okorie, pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Also joining us from our Kano studio is Malam Mahmoud Shafuddin, General Manager Market Competition and Rates, Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. It's a pleasure to have you join us. And also joining us via Zoom is Dr. Yemi Oke, Associate Professor of Energy and Electricity Law and Head of Department of Jurisprudence and International Law, University of Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right. We hope that our Zoom connections will work just fine. But let's begin this conversation from our Kano Network Center, where Jumai just introduced Malam Mahmoud Shafuddin. Malam Mahmoud, our reporter in the background gave an indication as to how electricity rates or tariffs are usually fixed. And this is something that we have got to know much more closely now since the deregulation and privatization of the power sector. Yes, past, this did not appear to have been an issue, but of course you're also aware that until the federal government through the Minister of Power stepped in to stop the latest hike in electricity tariff, however it was described, whether it was a little raise or otherwise. Nigerians were already grumbling that this was just another tariff increase that was unnecessary. But just give us an indication. Why is it that all we hear mostly is increase in electricity tariff rather than increase in the quality and quantity of power supply?
Thank you so much, Kinsley. I'm Jumai. I'm glad to be here, and good morning, Nigerians. Indeed, this is a very pertinent question. Why is it that what we tend to hear always is the issue of an increase in tariff instead of hearing about an increase in service quality? But the truth about it is that for quite a while, we have been witnessing improved in service quality. But of course, the tendency for us has always been to hamper, to a large extent, to hammer, on the negative. But the reality has been, over time, since the privatization of the sector, there has been tremendous improvement in terms of the actual power generated, generated, transmitted, and what is also being distributed. In fact, that is what made the Commission to bring this concept of service-based tariff. The narrative has been cost reflectivity. And last year, when the discourse came to the Commission and requested for a review of the tariff, we went around all over the country to all the states of the Federation, to all nooks and crannies. We also directed the discourse to, on their own, undertake similar consultations. And at the end of the day, what we heard from Nigerians was that we are willing to pay if there is an improvement in service quality. So we came back, we sat, we reviewed the opinions of Nigerians, we reviewed the comments of various stakeholders. We also made presentations to government, and we came out with this idea. Okay, going forward now, instead of insisting only on paying for the cost, let it be that only those that have experienced or are experiencing improved in service quality are the ones that should pay higher tariff. Before, what we used to have is a tariff based on classes, let's say, of usage: residential, commercial, industrial. Now we move to service bands based on hours of supply. And beyond even hours of supply, there is also quality of the power that is even being supplied to the various users. So that's what obtains currently.
With you, Kingsley has talked about how you arrive at tariffs that people pay for electricity in Nigeria. Can you help us to evaluate the methodology used in arriving at that?
Thank you, Jumai. I think I want to be, I don't want to be technical here for the majority of our viewers. I want to go take us through the basics, what is involved in the tariff determination. First, it is essential to understand that the electricity value chain consists of three major players. First, we have the electricity or the power generators. Those are the ones that produce the power or the electricity that is supplied to our various residences, offices, industries, and the rest. By the time they produce this power, it goes through a transmission network. In Nigeria, we have one transmission company that is called the Transmission Company of Nigeria. It has the mandate of transmitting this electricity, this power that is generated, to the various distribution companies. The transmission company serves, like in a layman's language, let's say a transporter. The generation company is a producer. They produced power. They generated power. The transmission company transmits it, that is, transported to the various distribution companies. Those are the ones that are most popular among Nigerians. We have 11 of these distribution companies spread along the length and breadth of this country. Each of these three key and important players, they have their cost. So it is an aggregation of the cost of these three that gives us the cost of electricity. And of course, you should expect that aside their cost, they also must have a margin for profit. And this margin is also regulated to an extent. Let's start with the electricity generators, that is the generation companies. These generation companies, currently we have both hydro and thermal generators. The hydro generators are very popular, very well known to Nigerians. You have the Kainji, the Shiroro, and of course the Jeva. That's mainstream and north-south power. And you have the thermal stations that are using gas. Each of these has a unique power purchase agreement. What do we define, or how do we define a power purchase agreement? A power purchase agreement is an agreement that is signed between a generation company and an off-taker. in this case, the off-taker, that is the person buying, is a government agency also called the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company. It was purposely set up by the government so as to provide a reliable and a secure source of payment to the GENCOs. The belief at the time of privatization was that the distribution companies, who naturally should be the primary off-takers, do not have the capacity to handle that. So the government set up this temporarily. So in a way, the government shoulders that responsibility. Then you have the transmission company of Nigeria that is fully owned by government. The transmission company of Nigeria has its own cost, even though it is government. It is only fair that its costs are also fully covered. Then you come to the distribution companies. The distribution companies also have their various costs. Each of these within the chain, they have capital expenditures that they incur in terms of the capital assets they acquire or they install in the provision of this service. They also have operational expenditures in terms of the salaries, the maintenance, everything. So it is an aggregation of all this that adds up to the tariff. What is our role in this? Our role is to ensure that these costs that they bring to us, one, they are prudent. They must pass the prudency test. That most of these assets that they put in are also useful or used unuseful. You just don't come and claim that, let's say, for Transmission Company of Nigeria, because they have long transmission lines spread across the country, they even have helicopters that they use in monitoring these lines. You can't come and say you are going to buy a super whatever plane for that, or you are going to buy 10 helicopters.
Mahmoud, GM, we're going to have to pause you in the meantime. We know that you're explaining the cost factors along the value chain from generation through transmission right up to distribution. You're going to get to distribution. We just want to also give an opportunity to Dr. Sam Amadi, of course, who was chairman of NEC, to also weigh in on the issue that we are kicking off this conversation. Namely, Dr. Sam Amadi, a question I asked earlier was, why is it that the major conversation that we've had over the past 15 years or more since the ESPR came into being has been the question of tariff and matters that are related to all that. I'm not asking us to return to the days of NEPA, but apart from the crazy bills and inadequate power supply, tariff didn't seem to be an issue. And at some point, if you recall, when NEPA started supplying meters, that's to say prepaid meters, the question of crazy bills actually came down. So if you had power, of course, you paid your bill. If you didn't have power, your meter wouldn't run. But just the sheer agony of electricity consumers has tended to persist. And it appears that consumers are the receiving end of what some persons allege to be the somewhat arbitrary price fixing by those who provide electricity, whether from GENCOs right up to the discos. Dr. Amadi, let's have your take on this.
Thank you, and good morning to all. First, I think my friend Shafuddin has tried to explain a very difficult thing, and he's done well. Let me say this clear. You hear about tariff review every day or almost all the time because we are in a stage in this market that there is scarcity everywhere, meaning that the market has not attained any level of stability. Now, ideally, the regulator has, the multi-year tariff order is supposed to be something that, people will not even notice that much because the prices advertised in the multi-year tariff order will be stable because the projections by NEC will be stable. For example, the year that ended, I think NEC built its model around 4,100 megawatts, if I'm correct. But average, total cumulative average supply in that year, that means power that actually the DISCO sold to consumers, was less than maybe 4,000, 3,000 or something, less than 4,000. What that means in reality is that because we are in a market where we are operating with scarcity and therefore we're on edge, it means that the revenue immediately does not balance. So it's a case of saying this company will sell 200 bags of cement and therefore the total cost is X and the revenue will be X plus a reasonable profit. And in a year, the company sells 1,200 bags of cement at the same cost or even more cost. So clearly, their revenue doesn't add up. The second factor we should remember is that these tariffs are indexed, that means indexed to certain changes that are usually associated with a market. For example, foreign exchange. Since the COVID-19, there has been a significant change, or we used to have a fairly stable forex market, fairly stable inflation market in the past, but recently it has not been so for obvious reasons. Now, what this means also is that a regulator will be trying to balance that, because what a forex crisis simply means that if I'm buying my products, I'm making investment in dollar and then being paid in naira, then that means somebody has to, more naira has to be paid to meet the same dollar cost. So the tariff structure says every year, the regulator looks at what they call the variables that change. Inflation, quantity of gas, the cost of gas, quantity supplied, very important. If the quantity is larger, the simple arithmetics of economics. If you have more quantity, fixed costs remain the same, maybe variable cost changes, it means that the total cost, the marginal cost of production will be lower. So at that point, it takes you less to produce extra. But if your quantity is small, then the average cost or the marginal cost will be higher. So when the regulator look at those indicators every year, and they are plus minus 5, as we say in those days, meaning they are significant, they have to reindex the price to the new indicators, and what that causes is some shift in the average cost. Now, the regulator can decide that based on the economic condition now, we cannot allow immediate recovery of that revenue gap. We have to plump it back, maybe hope that if things improve next year, we will allow the DISCOs to have it, in which case greater quantity production produced will mean that the unit cost of that extra revenue shortfall will be less. Or the regulator can say, we have huge financial gap in this market. It's dangerous. We need to recover this money at this point to help the operators become financially viable. If they say so, the next question for regulator will be, whose customer classes should we use to recover this money? So they now decide how to spread it. So quick answer, the reason why we talk about tariff all the time is that whereas the cost of production is increasing in this market, the supply services, the product themselves are not increasing, or we're not getting better service at the same rate. So what this means, therefore, is that cost escalates, quality of power and quality of power is not increasing much. So consumer gets to get saddled with this. So we are still a very inefficient electricity market in two ways. One is that it seems to be that, and regulation is difficult, NEC will be learning and improving over time. They are doing better than before, which means to manage to audit the DISCO's cost profile, to make sure that the DISCOs are being efficient in their production is difficult. It requires data, high-level data, big data, need to see that they are even spending appropriately for themselves, for their staff. You need to see that they're making those investments they ought to make. Now, look at this. We just got a report, Femi Falana wrote to EFCC about goings on in a Ibadan disco, where the former chairman, who was one of the co-investors and whose bank was involved, is now petitioning for fraud against his partners. Now, what that tells me clearly is the structure of the enterprises that bought the asset, their structure is weak, which is the problem we have with privatizing quickly. They are very weak. They don't have even corporate cohesion. They don't have capacity to invest over time, to access funding. They were contraptions put together to access, to win the bid, and they won the bid. So we can't even say that the entities in the market are strong enough to, on their own, incur this cost, in this loss for the short time, and expect that in the medium to long term, the disco will allow them to be made whole. So the regulator is under so much intense pressure to help the operators balance their book and have the ability to invest. Under intense pressure, looking at consumers who are not getting the services that they ought to get, and who are being asked to spend more of their income at a time of poverty, at a time of, because of nobody's fault, COVID-19, revenue from government, revenue from households are shrinking. And so it's a difficult tightrope that the regulator walks. So the problem is that consumers are getting increases more regular than they're getting visible improvement. It is true that some places have improved. They have moved some people to a higher bandwidth. I understand that part of what NEC did was that the discos moved those who are receiving like 10 hours to 15 hours of power with an assurance that they pay more, they get more value. The question will now be, can we be sure that the discos will deliver on those commitments? And so it's simple to understand it basic. The consumer interest people will have an issue, because why should the consumers be the ones who will pay for inefficiency? Two people can pay for it, or three. One, government pays by subsidy. Government cannot subsidize anymore because of financial crisis, and because it affects investment, it affects the economic outlook, or the outlook of the economy. Two, operators, they have to look for money, borrow money, invest, and hopefully 5 to 3 years, they'll be able to, as they improve services, improve consumer value, they improve the tendency for consumers to pay more, and then the prices can come up. And by the way, when the power supply improves very much, the prices start coming down, because those costs, those inefficient costs, have been eliminated. But in that 5-10 years, the crisis is that only the consumer is the person who can pay more, because all costs in the sector are paid by consumers. So the answer to your question is, why are we always talking about tariff increase? Because our model is not stable. The assumptions that NEC does not control most of them. NEC, we can say that the cost of gas, not maybe a little bit stable, but the forex changes, the inflation changes, the cost of production that changes because of inefficiency, the loss levels are not coming down. Most of those things are not directly under NEC. What the best NEC can do is to use regulation to control them, to force discos to do more, to improve their own efficiency. And that's why when I was NEC chairman, it was controversial. But at the point when we saw these tariffs going up, we called an inquiry and discovered that maybe some of those losses that they asked us to pass to consumers are inefficient and within the control of the discos. And we said, we're going to put on zero. Every disco, come and prove to us that these losses we're going to pass on are not your own losses, inefficiency, your own extravaganza. Show us. When we show us, we will put it in. But unfortunately, it was close to election and people thought it was political. It was not political. We are trying to balance the fairness between discos and consumers. If discos are not efficient and taking their own losses and finding a way to use change management strategies to improve efficiency, why should consumers be the ones who take risk that they have no capacity to manage? That was the logic. And I think maybe NEC need to look back into it and see that the discos are being pushed to the edge to be more efficient. If the operators are not efficient, consumers will continue to pay the price of inefficiency. That's what's happening. That's why we're always doing tariff review, because the market is not financially stable, because the market is still very inefficient.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sam Amadi, for your opening comment here. We'll now come back to the studio where Prince Will Okere is seated here with us. You've listened to all our guests who have started talking about the tariff increase, and Dr. Amadi has said that changes due to inefficiency, and it also falls on the consumer. There's a lot of confusion there, back and forth, reduction of tariff, increased tariff. Consumers are really under the weight of the changes and the cost of electricity in Nigeria. How can you come in to sort of alleviate the suffering? What have you been doing to make sure that consumer voices are heard?
Thank you very much. I'm worried. You hear Nigerians talk about restructuring, they talk about redesigning the structure of governance and all that. But the primary issue is electricity. What is the governance structure of the electricity sector, considering consumers' interest? Let's look at the objectives of NEC, for instance, in Section 32, subsection 1F of Electric Power Sector Reform Act. It provides that the regulator should be fair. Regulation should be fair and balanced to the consumer, the licensee, the investors, and other stakeholders. Here we are talking about tariff increase. And from what you've heard, almost everybody say here, there has been regular increase in tariff. But what level of consultation do you have with the consumers? If you are being fair to them, if you increase tariff quarterly or annually, there should be annual consumer conference on tariff in electricity. Now, permit me, because to some extent, there is need to look at what are the objectives of NEC, for instance. Where regulator begins to disregard the law that set them up. For instance, failure to do nationwide consultation and data generation on tariff. When you talk about cost-reflective tariff, how many states have you consulted, for instance? To what extent has the discos obeyed the performance agreement they signed at the beginning? What is the role of the states, where the citizens that pay the bulk of the money and the local governments that pay the bulk of the money, where is their position in the electricity governance structure? Now, what has happened is that NEC really takes advantage of the consumers. As we speak today, network expansion is funded by consumers. There are communities that are spending billions of naira on electricity. It is not recorded anywhere in government books. But if World Bank give Nigeria $1 billion, it will be celebrated that they have given loan. And Nigeria will be enslaved to pay back that money. But Nigerian citizens are contributing their hard-earned money to buy wire, buy pole, buy transformer, do everything for this electricity to work. And the disco relaxes. Have they mentioned how much federal government has given to these discos to borrowed and put into this sector in order to make it work? Where is the result that you've generated? Now, when you talk about tariff not being reflective, is it based on the assumption you've done in Abuja? Or is it based on the assumption you've done in places like Kotangora, like places in Imo, Abia, Lagos State, Ogun State? Where are the reports from those areas as regards how much they pay? Have you considered the estimated billing? Remember ab initio, the transformers in underestimated billing methodology. The transformers were supposed to have meters that will check how much energy that is supplied from where you will now do the estimation. But most transformers never had meters. And the regulator was there watching. Why is the regulator only interested in tariff increase and not in monitoring the discos to obey the regulations? Because if you look at the objectives in Section 31 that I mentioned, most of the issues there are not just tariff increase. You're talking about providing electricity and making sure it is available to the people. You're talking about fixing tariff that is commensurate, that the investor can recover his cost, and as well provide access, provide electricity to the consumers. Here the consumer doesn't have the electricity. Here the consumer is funding electricity provision. Here the consumer is... There are some states where communities have funded electricity provision. If you build a house there, it happens in many communities in Imo now. If you build a house there and you want to connect to electricity, as an individual, you may pay almost 300,000 to the community before you can connect to the electricity. Meanwhile, this is government service. Nobody talks about it. In some communities, individuals pay as much as 1 million naira for them to connect to electricity. And the DISCO doesn't care. The regulator doesn't care. Where are the evaluation report? Like, can the regulator provide evaluation report for 2020 on the state of consumers in terms of electricity supply or governance? That will now reflect that what they are saying now. Because what we hear here are just technical languages. You're talking about the cost you spend in dollar, the gas you spend. But what we are talking about is, how many consumers do we have in Nigeria? Where is the evaluation report? How much you have been paid on estimation? Last year, we intervened on behalf of 3 communities in Imo, over 31 million naira, given to them on estimation. No justifiable reason. As I speak with you now, the Net Forum office in Owerri is having issues with our association. They want to stop us from even writing complaints on behalf of consumers because they feel they need to protect the DISCOs rather than protecting the consumers. So it's an issue of law here, where government does not make the regulator know that they were established not for the DISCOs, but established to balance interest of the DISCOs and the consumers. But they are not tilting towards the DISCOs rather than looking at the consumers. And they're taking advantage because the consumers are not well organized in this country. And the question we now ask is, the donors that talk about transparency and accountability in Nigeria, why are they ignoring electricity? Why are they ignoring discussions on transparency and accountability in the electricity sector? But they're more interested in giving loan to Nigeria to pump into electricity. But they're not interested in knowing how these funds they are putting in there are used to ensure that the average Nigerian consumer benefits.
All right, Comrade Princewill, thank you very much. You've raised a number of pertinent questions, and we will give Mahmoud Shafuddin the opportunity to respond to some of those key issues. But there's one matter that has also been on the table. I would like Dr. Sam Amadi to also respond to this before we go over to our Kano Network Center. Dr. Sam Amadi, well, we do know that it's part of the factors to consider in determining tariff. That is to say, Forex rate. Once again, you have to pardon some of us who have been around for a while. During the days of NEPA, whether they were giving crazy bills or estimated bills, nobody ever heard of exchange rate as a factor in billing. So why is it that in the era of privatization, and even at the time we're talking about local content, Forex rate now becomes a factor? And Forex rate is not a stable rate from January 1st to December 31st. So why Forex? It's like, you had the orange seller telling you that, Forex rate has gone up, so my price of orange will also go up because the tray I used to sell the orange, is imported. What is the role of Forex, as a factor in determining electricity tariff? When, as I said, during NEPA, nobody ever heard of Forex rate.
Very good question and I think, very important question. Now, let me start it this way. A few days ago, I used to buy water, sewer water in carton. So I said, and then it used to be 1.5, it's now 1.6, it's 1.7. Now, some of the things we buy have increased. And my secretary says, everything has increased. And I was wondering, how did these economic indicators affect these basic things like carrots that I buy? Of course, I know how it does, through economic pressure. Now, you made a good point. During the time of NEPA, nobody talks about Forex. Why? Simple. Government socialized those losses. So that's why public enterprises are often said to be inefficient. They're inefficient because they do not react to price changes quickly. NEPA didn't post any profit. Part of why this sector collapsed was because there was no accountability. People got their salaries, they paid their salary every month through national budget, and they were not operating at strict commerciality. So when you privatize, what that means is that you are now going to be bound by price reflexivity, meaning that, or cost reflexivity. Once the enterprise sees a price shift in its cost, don't forget that this is a regulated market. What that means is that NEC approves price tariffs based on proven costs. Somebody comes to you and says, this is the cost of producing X plus profit. You say, show me. They verify it and say, this cost is true. Now, that price holds as long as that cost remains. If the cost shifts because of their own inefficiency, they bear the loss. If the price shifts because of these variables that you yourself projected to them. So in preparing the tariff, you tell them, we're going to accept a single-digit inflation for 3 years. And that was the basis on which you calculated their cost of money. Then the inflation shifts. Something has changed. But let me tell you what the secret. In other developed markets, if this market was an 18,000 megawatts market, and customers have power 24/7 or pretty much 24/7, and the revenue of the discos continue to grow, those changes will not be passed to you immediately. What happens? The regulator says, because there are a lot of redundancy, the regulator says, don't worry, we are going to next tariff review, which could be 2 years or 1 year, bring all these costs that have changed, we will put it back for you. There are people in the US who don't pay bills. Trumps, people in this, who are out of job for some time. It doesn't matter. The so-called subsidy government gives them, or government will shift that small cost to insignificant percent to those who can pay, maybe commercial. And because it's still a cheap power compared with self-provisioning, people don't bother. So I agree with Prince well, but let's not behave as if this is a world without science. The cause of our problem, like Fela says, the show itself for us in our face. The cause of our problem is that we are not producing. We don't have capacity. We are dealing with scarcity. Scarce products are expensive. The cause of our problem is it's not that Prince is right. You say, oh, this could, well, okay, let's put it this way. What NEC can improve is consumer service. There are two different things. Prince were talking about community buying their pool. It's not pricing. It's failure of operation and regulation. The NEC can go there, polish those disco provide transformer and those meter. It will not change the price. The price is that these increases are because we are inefficient. As we move in the efficiency level, prices fall. Now, let me give you an example. Take telecom, for example. People say, oh, telecom, there's no magic NCC did. What happened with telecom was as they got more people into the competition, then the profits reduced for those who are there, monopoly. And then people can now see that actually, to win in this market, you have to drive down your price. To drive down your price, you have to drive down your cost, improve efficiency. Instead of using 5 drivers like NEPA was using, it is going to use only 1 driver. So it's the work of NEC to keep on looking at the cost. I'm sure they are doing that. To make sure that the costs are very prudent. But the point I'm making, sir, is that if we don't move from 3,400 megawatts average supply to at least 7,000 or 6,000 megawatts of daily supply, it will be theoretically impossible for the price with what is going on not to keep changing. Should it change twice a year? Maybe not. For example, NEC could have offloaded all those prices at once. And so the price increases, maybe the minor review this year, they will profit back. They can do that, but it depends on the condition they face. The regulation is about knowledge and science. It's not about passion alone. I want to change things. You have to look at what, because the error can collapse the economy. Not just the discourse, but the entire economy. if there's loss of production, it affects 40% of the economy is based on cost, is based on power. So the point is that under the old NEPA, somebody was absorbing these losses. Federal government of Nigeria, paying budget, paying for cost, consumers were not paying for power. Under this new arrangement, somebody will bear the cost, consumer. But like we said, fair regulation means that the regulator makes sure that no inefficient cost falls on consumer. That means intense regulation. I'm of the view that the federal government should not allow states create regulators to deal with consumer affairs only. Like in the US, the FAC, which is like NEC, regulates transmission network, regulates interstate, but state PCUs regulate consumer issues and order the discourse. So we might have a sense we are states that are closer to the consumers. People like them can use the local government and state and make sure that based on next approved tariff, next approved standards, somebody at the local level is monitoring behavior of discourse. When we are there, we try to open zonal offices across the country because we knew that intense with poor information, with the behavior of companies wanting to exploit consumer, it is a human behavior. That's why I have regulation. No company, every company would like to exploit consumer. For example, today, look at the way the IT industry are making a lot of money because of COVID pandemic. The state has to regulate. If you allow them, they will gorge us. We saw data. If you buy data today, it doesn't last 2 hours. It's finished. Because it's a tendency, that's what we study in economics and competition law, that regulated corporations will like to cheat. What stops them from cheating is a strong regulator. So this idea of crying over spilled milk, they're going to cheat you if they can afford it. Our job is to police them properly so that what they commit to, they deliver. There's no reason why communities should be buying poles and transformers that are already part of the tariff that this court has approved. But you need stronger, more visible regulator on the ground. And so these are some of the things we should be talking about. I agree with, I'm a consumer, I'm paying. I have an office, I'm not in NEC, I don't receive any government money, so I'm not biased. The problem is that I know that you fix it on two levels. You fix consumer care, but you fix production issues. If you fix consumer care, you don't fix production, consumers will be happy, suddenly they have no light, because this light has to be produced in the smartest, most efficient, and sustainable manner. And that's what NEC struggles to do. They might have got it perfect, they need to do more, but let's not assume that NEC sits there and want consumers to have a tariff increase. That's no existing industry survives with tariff increase, because for two things, increase of tariff occasionally creates tendency for consumers to bypass. High tariff increase is not in the interest of even the discourse, because people at a point, if the tariff is too high, people will move away to self-supply, people will start to steal power because they can't pay, and that's not good. And the discourse knows, really, that if tariff is too high, they can't collect the money. In fact, that's why if you do a review, research, you discover that when tariff increases too much, it does not follow with better revenue. Sometimes you discover that the revenue gap still remains because there's greater theft of power, greater bypass, and greater debts, unwillingness to pay. People disconnect, they buy generator and just manage, generally move along. So I think we have to have a conversation that converges 2 points. Consumer care, we can do it immediately. And two things, NEC has to be more on the ground. Perhaps state governments should set up consumer care centers and regulators that deal with consumer based on what NEC has already regulated, so that there's somebody boots on the ground policing disco behavior. Because that behavior, even with the scarcity, discos can improve their performance. And the second part of the formula is improving production efficiency so that with more quantity, average and marginal cost will be lower.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Sam Amadi. Fix consumer care and increase production level. We'll take a break right now. When we return, our conversation on electricity tariff will continue. Don't go away.
edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the game changer, His Excellency Governor Abdullahi Suley of Nasarawa State. Broadcasting in a digital economy, Maxwell Logo gives an insight. This edition also features Nancy Naji of AIT, a name synonymous with business. Meet the NCDC boss, Dr. Chikwe Ihekweazu. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, also x-rays the relevance of social media in the modern society. Meet some TV professionals who have impacted their spaces and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
Dialogue, empathy, love, and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
For all to be well, we appeal that we should refrain from volatile, provocative, inciting messages and language.
Let's build and not destroy.
You're welcome back, and we're still on electricity tariff. Now let's come back to the studio where Prince Will Okore is sitting. You know, it's frustrating, I can see. You know, when you carry on your shoulders the problems of your consumers. And Amadi has talked of fixing consumer care and increasing production level, and he has said states should have a regulatory transmission network. I can see you were shaking your head when he was talking. What's your view on that?
I totally disagree with him on the issue of saying that the issue here is productivity. The issue here is, for instance, those that set up Electric Power Sector Reform Act clearly made it clear in Section 80 and 81, Consumer Protection and Licensing Performance Standards. How has NEC enforced that aspect of the Act till date? And that aspect talks about issues that will lead to consumer protection. How will you be talking about productivity when in actual sense, for instance, you see some places now, transformer will get bad. For 2 years, the DISCO won't care. Because they are not making money based on the rules. They are making money because they believe that they have the latitude to do what they want to do with impunity, because the regulator is not willing to even call them to order. So what you see, okay, for instance, why would you say there is inadequate tariff when you've not gone to the local government? If you look at, there is need here, please, permit me. We need to really look at what are the objectives of NEC. For instance, in this book we developed, you asked what we have been doing. This is Electricity Consumer Protection Handbook. If you look at here, among the primary responsibilities of Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission established by Section 31 of Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005 are overseeing prices and terms of engagement, establishing a national electricity market with associated institutions to oversee the rules. Which institution oversees consumer affairs in the electricity value chain today? Because if they are setting up institutions to oversee the rules, there should be an institution set up to oversee the consumer protection and licensing performance standards. How has NEC taken care of that, for example?
Well, now, I thought that's the point that Dr. Amadi was saying a while ago, that assuming NEC cannot undertake that, then state governments could, under appropriate legal arrangements, set up consumer protection units, as it were, for electricity purposes.
But what I mean when you talk about tariff that we are discussing now is, before you raise tariff and say that the tariff is inadequate, shouldn't you get data from consumers at the rural areas? Shouldn't you get data from consumers at the local government and the states to know whether this claim that tariff is inadequate is proper? For instance...
And then again, Comrade Prince Will, earlier, Malam Mahmoud did say that last year that they went round.
It was faulty. It was faulty. Let me explain to you. Let me explain to you before we misinform Nigerians.
Hang on a second. Let me restate what he said so you can respond. That they went round the Confederation and sought the opinions of consumers who, according to him, said that they were willing to pay if power will be steady and available.
Mm-hmm.
That in other words, that they consulted widely. Are you aware of that?
He said so. But yes. I know that the consultation was not wide. For instance, the one that was done for North Central Zone was held at Merit House in Abuja here. You didn't have up to 100 persons there. And North Central should cover how many states in this country with how many local government areas. So if you have done wide consultation, we told them that day at Merit House, we said to them, this is not consultation. Where are people from Kogi State here? Where are people from Niger State here? Where are people from all the North Central zone? Where are the local government people here? There were none. What they virtually did was just to get some people who were within Abuja that came to that Merit House. Now, if you're saying you've done wide consultation, where is the input of the local government councils in the zone that you are covering? There should have been input from them so that you will now know that what they're telling you is realistic. For instance, how many transformers are working in the states today? How many transformers had meters that you can use to now know that the bills that the people are given on estimation are realistic? So that when you now say that the tariff is inadequate, you know where you are basing it on. But here you have, where do they account for the estimated billing that people pay without meter? As we speak today, how many Nigerian consumers are metered? Now you are basing tariff not being justified or not being adequate by the few meters that you have provided for people in a few urban areas. I wanted to read down to you to see that they even have, NEC has the responsibility of enhancing rural electrification issues. How have they done that? Will you just say a tariff is inadequate? You are now considering the people that are getting some losses or that are importing things, but you are not considering the volume of money Nigerian consumers at the rural areas and at the states are losing to the discos on a daily basis. If you compute how much the discos make from every local government area, one autonomous community pays no less than 750,000 every month to Enugu Electricity Distribution Company. And it's not recorded anywhere because it is on estimation. In 2016, they said the people should be debulked. Go to communities today, they are still under bulk billing. In fact, we had to write before some communities were debulked. And when you debulk them, what they do now is the same estimated billing. As we speak now, there's a community in Imo that accused them of owing 21 million naira. When we wrote them to explain how they arrived at it, you can imagine that NEC Forum Office invited me to it. I flew down there. Entering the place, they said they won't hear from me again, that they want to hear only from the community. Whereas a section of the Electric Power Sector Reform Act, under manner of handling complaints, provided that consumer NGOs can present complaint on behalf of the customer. So why did you now refuse to hear from the NGO? We have written NEC, and the level of impunity in NEC is so high that government really need to look at it. On the 15th of October, the past chairman, Professor Momo, invited us in the presence of the Consumer Affairs Commissioner and said, look, the treatment consumers are receiving from NEC Forum offices need to be addressed. On top of that, they wrote us and we went and they walked us out and said that they prefer to deal with consumers. And what did they do? Out of the 21 million, the distribution company said they said they should wipe it away. They now went and shared that money to individual households as outstanding bill. Debulked them. They'll give you bill and say they have debulked you. You pay 2,000 naira this month, but you have outstanding of 45,000. How did you generate it? The same thing is happening in Abuja now, where they are talking about mass metering. You say you are doing mass metering, you go and put meter in the people's houses. The next thing is when they pay to recharge, you take the money and say it's outstanding. How did the outstanding come? How transparently did you bill them to get the outstanding you are collecting from them? In December, a program was held at Jai, Consumer Affairs Issues on electricity. Consumers were complaining that they will come and force them to take the meter. Once they put the meter and they go to recharge, the money will go and they won't get light. They will tell them it's outstanding. Now, how did they get this outstanding? These outstanding are still the bills that we are given on estimation, without transparent way of billing them.
Are you saying there's no transparency?
No transparency. So what they do is to milk Nigerian consumers dry, because the system is so cumbersome and the regulator has not created enough platform for consumers' issues to be properly addressed.
Okay.
Take for instance...
Comrade Priestwell, let's pause you in the meantime. You've taken a hit at the regulator, and Mahmoud Shafuddin, who is General Manager, Market Competition and Rate rates at NEC is still with us from our Kano Network Center. Malam Mahmoud, of course, I'm sure you've been absorbing all of these points that have been raised both by your former chairman, Sam Amadi, and the consumer warrior, that's Comrade Prince Will. So let's give you the opportunity of responding to them. But perhaps as a guide, you may wish to respond to this point that the claim by Comrade Prince Will that NEC is doing more to protect the discourse rather than protecting both the discourse and consumers in a fair and balanced manner.
Thank you so much. I can understand the passion of Prince Will. I can understand that he's so passionate about this like all of us. But let me start first by correcting some errors that he made. At the beginning of this, I said we had extensive consultation all over Nigeria. And he said it wasn't true. Unfortunately, Mr. Prince Will, you are on the wrong on this. NEC performed extensive consultation. You said in the North Central it only took place in Merit House. What happened in Merit House was only a consultation regarding TCN's application. NEC and the DISCO, that is AEDC, had consultation in Mina. There was consultation in Ilorin. There was consultation even in Abuja, in Papi. There was consultation somewhere, I think, in Garki, in one hotel, I can't remember. There was consultation in Lafia. There was consultation in Benue. In all the 36 states capital of Nigeria, there were consultations. And in each state, there are consultations in at least 2 places. There are records for that. We have evidence of that. It was widely covered by NTA, by various news media organizations. And the result of that consultation was the service-based tariff. And on the issue of fairness, yes, the law demands that we should be fair. And as humanly as possible, the Commission has tried to be very fair in its handling of issues. One important issue that all those customers talk about has been the issue of investment in discourse network. And I think partly we have a Nigerian problem, a problem that I call of failure to abide by the principle of delayed gratification. We are so good at, let's say, dishing out bribes to people, to police when they stop us on the way, when we do wrong, or we believe we are on the right, but our time will be wasted. The Commission has a regulation on investment in networks, in electricity network. It says before you put in any transformer, before you draw in any line, in any disco network, you should sit and discuss with them. You should agree with them on how they are going to fund or pay you back for that investment. But as usual, most of us don't abide by this regulation. They just go ahead and put in the infrastructure, and at the end of the day, start engaging discourse in arguments. And of course, the discourse will usually claim that this was done without their consent, and probably even some may even claim that they had intention of putting same, or even claim it was a donation that was done. We have a lot of cases on this, and we have resolved so many, and we are still resolving some. On the issue of the foreign offices, which he mentioned, it is important to state here that forum offices are not strictly manned by commission staff. The forum offices are supposed to be a means of resolving conflict between the discos and their customers. What the commission provides is a secretary to that forum. All the other members of the forum are representatives of stakeholders. In every forum office across the country, you have representative of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. You have a representative of the Chamber of Commerce. You have a representative of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. You have a representative of Consumer Protection Council. And you have a representative of civil society organizations. So if this, of course, and the representative of the DISCO cannot come together and fairly and honestly handle a case involving one of them, then I must say we have a problem. But of course, we appreciate the fact that as human, they can make mistakes. So there is an appeal process. If you are not satisfied with the decision of the forum, you still appeal to the commission on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Malam Mahmoud Shafuddin, for your response to the issues raised by the other guests. And now we have some tweets that came in as Nigerians are really burdened and would like to contribute to the conversation. Let's begin with Festus Akimboyewa. He said, what we need in our electricity market is competition and transparency. NEC should regularly provide Nigerians with an impartial data about our electricity, such as the prices we pay for our electricity, the profits suppliers make, and the challenges facing the suppliers.
Titus Monday Knock, with electricity tariffs going higher and higher every day, I think people should start planning on investing in solar power. By the time consumption in the national grid declines drastically, the power authorities will be forced to drastically drop their absurd charges.
And Mutana Farouk tweets, the hike in the price of PMS, VAT and electricity tariff has crippled many MSMEs in Nigeria. Government intervention cannot be felt due to these three economic monsters that are eating up the economic welfare of the masses and their businesses. Reduce the price of these three utilities.
Comrade Ngala, the only solution to electricity is the distribution of prepaid meters to customers.
And Festus still says, why did DISCOs make the process of acquiring electricity meter difficult? I have paid for 2 meters 2 years ago and still don't know when I will get them. Estimated billing is corruption and should not be forced on Nigerians.
Jamil tweets, it's becoming unbearable in a situation where unemployment is high. Those that manage to get something doing will have to expend the little hard-earned money they have on electricity bills.
And Yunus Idris tweets, increasing electricity tariff during pandemic and recession is not a good gift to Nigerians.
Steve Bond 007. Other countries are reducing their tariffs to relieve the stress of their citizens due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Why the incessant increases here? Where is the human face to policy making?
And Dialmoon Tongpang tweets, the electricity tariff should be reduced to the barest minimum. In fact, solar panels are just the best option.
Yerima Issa, I'm urging the Power Regulatory Authority to ensure due diligence and accountability in the distribution of power and ensure stable power tariff plan that will meet the yearnings and aspirations of consumers.
And Vitalis Yoronom tweets, the FG should declare a state of emergency in the power sector.
Now, this is coming from Benga Fajona. It says, can the NEC official please tell us here in Dawaki, Abuja, why we pay for 24 hours electricity and we don't get 16 hours power a day? Can anyone there also tell the people of Omo Ekiti, that's in Ekiti State and its environs, why they haven't had electricity for up to 6 years now?
Wow, that's really, really interesting. Daily Jack Solomon Twins, truly, income per capita is the major determinant of electricity demand, and therefore deregulated pricing of electricity products will ensure efficient product and resource allocation in Nigeria to reflect the observed income in electricity for electricity products in Nigeria.
All right, so those are the tweets that we can accommodate in the meantime. Let's return to Dr. Sam Amadi. Dr. Sam Amadi, in one of your several comments in this conversation, you've said that, look, what we are faced with is an inefficient electricity market. And the fundamental assumption, of course, in the deregulation and ultimate privatization was that efficiency will be attained. But in grappling with the inefficient market at the moment, we've also talked about the fact that there are issues with the corporations that got the pies at the time the privatization exercise took place. I'm just wondering if the corporations, that is to say the various companies or discos as they are called in the downstream sector of the power sector, if there are any of them that, of course, remain inefficient and non-competitive, why is it that we are not having corporate readers who will take over these interests?
Very good question. That is because it reinforces the fact that the market is inefficient. Now, let's step back. When I was chairman of NEC, I recall a meeting we had, the Minister of Power, with the minister called then Patinaji and PPE, and the issue, and our commission, the issue was that I was opposed to privatization. And it was a big issue, and I fought back. But the point was simple. And I said at one of the meetings in the villa that I've written a book on privatization before I became NEC chairman. That privatization is always difficult to do, especially when you have not dealt with corporatization, commercialization, and built strong regulation. Countries that privatize, even the UK, after attaining some level of supply satisfaction, adequacy, still had problem. It shows that consumers pay more, corporations get more profit. So what we call welfare gain may be less in terms of efficiency. So what the economists have said that, look, what gives efficiency is not necessarily transfer of ownership, but rules that constrain behavior in the market. That's a big issue. Now, but the point is this. When we are privatizing, even the World Bank said that it's not likely that we will sell all our assets because of the level of liquidity in the world, the fact that we are not even, there's so much risk, political risk in Nigeria there. We've not had consistent policy transition. So none of the big guys will really feel comfortable coming to the market. For example, we're the first in NEC to do the audited account of NEPA. There was no audited account. Think about it. A company had no audited account to publish until NEC did it in 2012, I think, before the privatization. Like Chris was up to now, we may not even have very clear proven customer numbers that are scientifically proven. So that means you don't even know exactly who is their customer. Some of the losses we are passing to consumers may not be losses that have been clearly segregated and certified. So what does that tell you? It tells that this market is not a very profitable. Yes, Christopher looks at the number of people in local government paying, but the question is, look, profitability is a matter of data sets. Can somebody sit in Washington, New York, who wants to invest and see this NEPA, this Abuja Disco, Eko Disco, Enugu Disco, for example? The Eko probably doing far better. Let's take Enugu, for example, where I come from. And the losses is very high. Collection loss is high. The bill they can't collect. The investor will not come and put in money. So we're not seeing very good investment in the sector for obvious reason, that the market is still not well governed, like Chris said. Well governed does not necessarily mean NEC. It means that the corporate code, management system, everything is clear, and people understand what is loss, what is profit. The second point, therefore, is that when we privatize, like I said, and I've always argued, I'm not against privatization. I'm saying that you need to be careful with privatizing. When you privatize in the way we did, you are signaling to the world that these assets are rubbish. And therefore, people who are going to buy it will buy it on the basis that, look, you couldn't use this company, that's why I throwing them away. So what you have seen, that's the point I'm making, is that people who didn't have established track record in power delivery, power supply production, came together as businessmen, entered into some MOU, got access to funding, prepared good bidding document, won the bids fairly. And by the way, when people say it was corruptly awarded, it's not true. Both BPE, NEC, everybody did their utmost best to make sure it was fair. But it was a competition between persons who are not first class. So if you have a class of people who score 40, 40, 40, and you do a test and somebody score 42, he's the number one. He wins the trophy. But he's not there in terms of competence, financial and also technical. NEC did what they called fit and proper review and discovered that based on the data we're using then, none of these, if not only one or two of these companies, actually had the demonstrated financial capacity to run the network. And it was controversial. Went to the vice president, there was a big debate. Later, we had a meeting, and we saw that BPE changed that TOR, the old one, and basically reduced the threshold so as to sell. And you don't have to blame anybody. Government had a policy. We can't deal with the financial requirement of running this sector, and it's not going well. So we want to sell it out quickly. So we said to those who are available. Those who are available are not the best in the world and couldn't be, because it's a market that has so much losses that nobody can come in easily like that. My alternative would have been, if we were a disciplined people, we would have corporatized the entity well, we would have used government to have still been in charge, but appoint experts without control, with cost-effective tariff. Then at this time now, we would have dealt with all these issues. We can now sell, even if for zero cost. We sell to people who have proven money that's already there. They can invest. So if they invest $100 million or $200 million in the network of each disco, you will see real upgrade. That's one of the crises we had. Now, there's something that Prince mentioned I want to take up. You see, when I talk about efficiency, Prince, efficiency is not something that happens in NEC or only in the disco. Efficiency is actually the fact that the transformer is not working. That's efficiency. Efficiency is actually that you are not connecting your customers to the rural area. Efficiency is also that you're not metering them. So you people, let's not banalize this conversation, because policymakers in Abuja want to have real knowledge. An efficient electricity sector will produce power efficiently, distribute efficiently, bill customers fairly and efficiently, collect their money, and respond to customer care and complaint. Efficient electricity sector, the forum offices will be running. You go there with a complaint, and there'll be procedure. You know the procedure. So it's not just that the people who are running it are not efficient, it's that the system has to improve quick. And look at the crisis. Yes, a regulator in NEC position at this time of this market will focus more on generating investment. It's natural.
Dr. Sam Amadi, thank you so much. You've raised a lot of issues and we're really running out of time. We'll come back to the studio now for his closing comments. Let's look at how can we have efficient electricity supply in Nigeria, and when will consumers be able to smile? Briefly, we're running out of time.
Yeah, let me quickly say or respond to Mr. Shamsuddin as I conclude. He should realize that when I say that their consultation was not effective, it's based on the fact that ab initio, it was said that the federal, state, and local government own 40% share in the electricity value chain. That, for me, presupposes that when you're doing consultation, there should be input from those three levels. And when you demand input from the local government, they will consult the consumers in that area. You demand from the state, they will consult. You demand from the federal, but where you don't, and you just do a skeletal thing, it doesn't make sense as far as we are concerned, because the data you come out with and the conclusions you come out with will not be realistic. Number two, is being unfair to say people know the way to invest in the value chain if you want to buy transformer. Why is it that they do not monitor how many transformers are functional? How will a community remain for 2 years without transformer? And you are the regulator and you have a disco working there. You have no monitoring mechanism to now make the discos take responsibility. Then when the community, out of frustration, decides to do it, you now say they didn't follow the rules. I don't think it's being fair on that. Finally, what is happening now is that the inconsistency in the billing policies that NEC is bringing out is affecting electricity consumer education. Because you don't know what to tell them again, that will be the yardstick for billing them.
All right. Thank you very much, Comrade Prince Will Okorie, National Coordinator of the National Electricity Consumers Protection Advocacy Program. I'd like to thank you always for your passion and the pertinent issues that you raise. From our Kano Network Center, Malam Mahmoud Shafuddin, General Manager, Market Competition and Rates of NEC. Deep appreciation to you. We hope that we have the opportunity of having NEC again join us when we are discussing other aspects of the electricity issue, particularly how to make efficient the market, which is grossly at the moment inefficient, as Dr. Sam Amadi, former chairman of NEC and currently Associate Professor of Law at Base University here in Abuja, also told us. Dr. Sam Amadi, always a delight having you on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, so that's it for us today on the program. We thank you for being with us. Remember, stay safe and be well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Jumu Yusuf. Thanks so much for watching.